Hello and welcome. In this video, it's gonna be pretty similar to a more recent video I did. But pretty much I'm just gonna look through all of it instead. Um, so what this video is gonna be is I'm literally just gonna go through all 48 VCT teams and I'm gonna put them on a tier list. What's gonna be different with this video? We're not gonna have have 6 tiers, as we're gonna add an F tier, and the tiers are gonna be slightly different. With S tier, instead of being like a favorite, it's gonna be like a top teams, and then the tiers A and B is like if they should or could make champs, and then C is just that they should make playoffs. D means that they have the potential to make playoffs, but I don't see them actually doing it. And if they do, it's probably a bit of an upset. And then F tier is just teams I'm not very hopeful for to make anything. Um, uh, Now, I also do have a bit of a thing where I cannot have more than 10 teams in one tier. Um, so it made it a bit challenging to sort of sort the teams out, but eventually I think I ended up with a pretty good list. Now, at the end, the tiers will not be in order, or like in the tiers, like the teams won't be in order. Um, but pretty much as I talk about the teams, I'm gonna say like where in the tier I would place them prop as well. So yeah. Um, so why don't we start? We're gonna start going one region at a time, starting with EMEA. So Fnatic, I mean, yeah, they are. I would say like a top four team in the world right now pretty easily, and that's sort of where I have my benchmark for these top teams. I feel like the top teams here are like teams that are pretty much guaranteed to make international events, while still like while also being able to be like favorites for the region to win them as well. Like it's like these top teams are going to be like teams that don't work, pretty much just barely even worries about making the internationals, because they're so good that if they don't even make the internationals, that's a pretty like huge mistake in itself. Um, because they usually will perform really well at internationals as is. So not making them is gonna be like, yeah, it's just gonna be like a huge disappointment. And I think Fnatic is one of those teams. I mean, as they've shown so far, they I would argue is probably the second best team in the world right now, and that's why I put them in the S tier. Um, and EMEA will actually have two S tier teams, and actually there's only two regions which have S tier teams in my opinion right now, which is EMEA and Americas. Um, Not that I think that APAC teams can't win international events, or that China teams can't win international events. I just think both those regions have like don't have those extreme standout teams. Like we can see this already with DRX and T1 making Masters Bangkok, and neither of those two teams making it to Masters Toronto. Um, and I just think that's really why there's no S tier teams there, because I just don't think like I just seriously don't believe that that region is at the level of the other ones at this current moment. Um, but yeah, so Team Heretics is an S tier. I do think the grand finals against Fnatic has been a bit unfair to them, although it's, to be fair, like been sort of their fault with some pretty poor map vetoes. But I do think like especially in that grand final, the four maps that didn't get played would have been close to maybe even some maps being sweeps for Heretics. Um, like I think the final two maps in that series would have been interesting to see. Um, Now the first two maps in that series, I think the ones that got banned by Fnatic, I think Fnatic probably would have lost both pretty badly. But the final two, I'm a bit more hesitant on. I would argue Team Heretics is probably the third or fourth best team in the world right now. They just look really good, even against Fnatic in that grand final. I mean, that was pretty much Fnatic's three best maps at that current moment. And I mean, Split didn't look great from Team Heretics, but also I would say Fnatic is like the best team in the world on Split right now. And then Icebox. I mean, I still think Fnatic has some work to do on their Icebox, but I mean, getting a 10-2 defensive half should tell you everything you need to know about how good Fnatic's Icebox is at this point. And then Fracture ending 14-12 showed. I feel like that showed that Team Heretics actually does know how to do their prep work, because Fracture was a map which last time they played wasn't really that close, and this time Team Heretics had found stuff to anti. It just ended up with Fnatic being like a better team eventually, and eventually taking it over the line. Now, Team Liquid is like a low A tier team for me. I don't think they're that high into the A tier. I don't think they're like a guarantee to make international, to make champs. Um, but I do think if Fnatic and Team Heretics comes 1 and 2 again, um, and they still come pretty high, they should pretty much be a lock for champs as is, just purely based on champs points, as they've made both international events. So the reason they are an A pretty much is just because like if they don't make champs, they have fumbled the bag completely. Like, to be completely honest, they fumbled the bag completely. And not only that, I also do think they are a really good team. I do think there are some glaring issues with the team overall. And I do think without Nats or Kiko performing, this team is just like not great. But how often is Nats and Kiko not performing? Not very often. I mean, against Team Heretics in the lower finals, they weren't really, but that was really the first time we had seen that, in my opinion. Like in my opinion, that was probably the first game we'd seen neither Nats or Kiko perform. So yeah, overall, I still think Team Liquid is a great team. But yeah, I don't think they are locks for champs, but they almost are. Now BBL was a team that are even lower in A tier. They ended up going into the A tier pretty much for the reasoning that I do think they looked really good. Like watching them play, like they actually looked really, really, really good. Um, Now against Team Liquid, they ended up losing obviously, but I feel like this was a game they probably should have won. Like Team Liquid was at one point like they were down pretty heavily. I'm pretty sure it was like what? Let's see here. It was 11, um, like 11-8, I think it was at one point. It was also 10-6. I'm pretty sure it was 11-8 and 10-6 at one point, and they still ended up losing map one, and then obviously they won map two 13-7. So BBL could easily have made it to the next international, and while I don't think as I said before, I don't think they're locks for champs at all. Um, I think with a good performance in stage two, and if Team Vitality continues to not look great, they should make champs. Like they really should just make champs straight up. So yeah, that's why they're in A tier. They're very low though. This is like both these teams are in the lower echelon of A tier, I would say. Now moving on to Navi. They're actually a C tier team. Not because I don't think they could make champs, but mostly just simply for the fact that I don't have that much hope that they will. I don't know. I feel like this split we saw like Navi that looked about as good as I feel like they could. Like I don't think they looked. I think they looked pretty good. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think they can look much better than this, and that's why I have them in C tier. I just think this team just has sort of a peak. Like Shao was in incredible form, and then Ruxic was in incredible form. Hero was in incredible form, and Qualanoob was in incredible form, and still they only finished fifth, sixth. Like that's sort of my issue with this team. I just don't see them coming much higher than this. Um, Now they should still make playoffs. Like they're still a good enough team to make playoffs. I just don't see them, even in their peak form, making champs. Now, Foot, on the other hand, is a team that I could definitely see making it. Um, they just have such high star power that no matter what, like if they just all show up, um, they can just go on a run and probably come second easily, if not even win the EMEA. Like Zeus is at peak form, like probably one of the highest mechanically gifted duelists in the entire world right now. And then Yetuye is one of the best Sentis in the world. Um, and then you got Ada, Captain Cracks, and Mr. Fallen, that core. Which, while I don't love it, and that's why they're not like super high, and I do think it's a core that has proven that they can make champs before. And I think they could definitely make champs again. I don't think they're remotely close to being like as good as like a BBL or Team Liquid, because I don't think like I feel like Team Liquid and BBL are both the two teams that I expect to make it off of points. Foot will literally need to have an insane stage 2 to make it, but I think they are at the like mechanically gifted level to where I could see them doing it. Now, Carmine Core, on the other hand, I don't. Um, Now, pretty much what this comes down to is just I don't think Eng and Sadak is a good fit. Now, look, they looked really great in the EMEA qualies for um, EWC. Um, I mean, they beat Navi 2-0, Koi 2-0, then beat Foot 2-0 to qualify immediately. But I also think that none of those teams were really like, oh yeah, these teams will be like the only team that really like proved anything to me, the only game that really proved much was the grand finals against Team Liquid. But even then, like I don't think that grand final Team Liquid were like high priority in winning that because I just simply don't think they care as much about that tournament as KC are doing. Um, and just overall, I just think KC, while they're a decent team, as I said, I just think that Eng and Sadak just is too weird of a combo to fully work. Um, Now, Avis, Sugetsu, Elite, and Martine is an incredible 4-stack core, and Sadak is the IGL as well. But I think the difference between Sadak and Eng versus someone like Sadak and Fraud is that Fraud still, while he does have some ideas similar to Sadak, um, I think his ideas are more level headed, and he can usually take Sadak's crazy and tone it down to the level where it actually looks viable. While I do think Eng, on the other hand, is the same, is almost like a different type of crazy, and for that reason, he can't really tone it down. So they're just like both kind of crazy, in their comp building and everything, and it just kind of doesn't work a lot of the time, in my opinion. Like just looking at the game against Navi, I mean, on Icebox, their comp is decent on Icebox, I will say, although the Omen is still, I don't like the Omen. Um, and then Split happens, and they got a double dome comp, which just looks kind of odd. Yeah, it's just like their comps are just not that great, to be honest, and that's really why I don't see them going very far. Now, Team Vitality, on the other hand, I'm still gonna place in B tier, um, and the reasoning really behind that is just like we know that with the caliber of player this team has, they could always make champs. Like I know they've been like looking towards maybe not playing like safe going off the roster and them having a new IGL. And honestly, I wouldn't mind that because I do think Safe has struggled in that role, and Safe probably needs to play Duelist if he's going to play in Tier 1. But I mean, Seavolf is an incredibly talented player, and then they have arguably the best duelist in the world in Durka, and then arguably the best Sentinel player in the world in Les, and then one of the best support initiator players in the world in Kicks. And it's just like, if you just get a solid, like, secondary initiator controller player, like, sort of like a similar to like a Munchkin or like something of that sort, this team is genuinely really scary. Like, really, really scary. And I always will think, especially after what they showed at especially what they showed at Master Bangkok. I mean, I always think that the potential of being a top 4 team in the world is there. And we know that. And that's why I put them in B tier. Now, going into the bottom 4, we're going to start with Giant X and D tier. Now, Giants for me is a team that I really like, actually. This new team with Ara and Flickless. I think Westside is one of the more underrated Sentinels in the entire region right now. I think he's one of the better Sentinels. And then Flickless and Ara looked incredible in the 2 games they played. Obviously, like, keeping it close against Fnatic and then winning a pretty dominant game, honestly, against Apex. Then Grubinho had a bit of a rough stage 1, but I think is still one of the better controllers in EMEA. Like, last year, he was so good. And then Cloud, I mean, if you've ever watched like Tier 1 EMEA Valorant at like a more in-depth level and have like watched interviews and stuff like that, everyone knows how good Cloud is. And honestly, like, if Cloud can like IGL well, and this team just sort of keep on just improving as well as they have been, I could see this team, honestly, maybe not making champs, but at least doing really well. But obviously, like, it's really difficult to say because you the potential is there. As I said, the playoffs potential is there, but you just can't really give them that benefit yet because you haven't fully seen it. Now, Movistar Koi, this is a roster that just feels kind of rough. I mean, not adding Noctung, I think, is a great add. And I don't know much about Batty G. I know he's been playing a bit in Spanish tier 2, and he's like he's a pretty OG player, but has never really been like a mainstay in tier 1. Now, do I think they chose the right players to replace? Not really. I mean, I know who Monster is. Monster is played on that Koi Phoenix core, and he's absolutely ridiculously good, and that's been for a long time. I just think Shados and Soulcast was the wrong players to like replace. I feel like Soulcast was one of their better players, and then Shados has always been like a consistently good player. I don't know. I just don't think they were the correct players to replace on this team. Like, I could have seen Natank come in, and then maybe them taking out like Filu for one of the two, maybe, but for one of Batty or Monster. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't see this team being good at all. Like, I just have little to no hope. I just don't think this roster is gonna work, and they still haven't in the past 3 years. This core, and I just don't see them continuing working, especially considering they pretty much just have a tier 2 roster at this point. Now, moving on to Gentlemates, I do actually have some hope for this team. I actually thought their old roster was pretty good. I just thought the biggest issue was Click on that duelist role really struggled. Now they have Vekash. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but he's pretty good. He seems pretty good. I mean, if you watch tier 2, at all, which I haven't really been doing. Um, but just looking at EWC, he has been performing really well, and um, looking at how he's been playing on Team Valiant, I mean, yeah, he's a he's a good he seems like a good duelist pretty much. Um, and so did Click. So it's like it's difficult to say with him. And then I mean the core of Kamik, Mini, and then Kada is inactive now, sadly, and same with Ziban, which is a bit sad. It's a bit like of a question mark of this roster. But I still feel like earlier on we saw the potential that this team had. Like this team has had glimpses of looking really good, and I think therefore I just can't really put them in F tier right now. Now moving on to Apex, this is a team I kind of need to. I mean, they still have not won a game this year. Like, still not won a game. And while I still think Mostly and Avova are two great players, I think with Fluorescent being gone, you just don't have much to work with here. I mean, Batu is a decent player, and then the rest of the roster is kind of a question mark. And I just don't see them going anywhere. I just don't see this Apex team being able to figure things out enough to where they can compete at the top level. So yeah, that was EMEA. Moving on to Pacific, this is where it gets somewhat interesting as we start with RRQ, which I would say is probably the highest A tier team, together with um, probably like each and every one of the top teams in Pacific. As I do think RRQ is a really, really good team. Um, I just think the instability of having a player like obviously Jemkin isn't unstable, but the instability of relying on a player like Jemkin to overperform over everybody else at such an insane level like he did in Pacific Stage 1 just isn't gonna hold in the long run. And teams are just, I think, gonna be able to eventually, like good teams will be able to handle this RQ team eventually. And I do think this DRX roster probably had a bit of a rougher playoff stage, and arguably could have won against RQ in their first game. And if they actually won that game, I don't think RQ is making it to this international event. I think they're probably beating Talon, maybe beating PaperX, but I think that game is close and then they will make it. But I think it's like a 50-50 that they make it if they don't win against DRX. But yeah, overall, I still think RQ is a great team and I still think they look really good. I just don't have my hopes that high. I don't think they're like a favorite or like a top 4 team in the world right now. I do think they're pretty good and they could definitely make damage at an international stage. I just don't see them being ever like a favorite to win an international, at least at this current stage. And I'm honestly feeling kind of similar to Genji, but I do think Genji has more potential to be a favorite. Um, Not because I don't think RLQ is a great roster, but I just think Genji has such a good core. Like the core of Texture, Karen, and Munchkin is just so incredibly good. And then Ash is just looking better and better. And same with Foxy9. I just think this team has some inconsistencies, especially with Ash and Foxy9. I mean, those two like Foxy9 was one of the best players of all of Stage 1 in the group stages. Like in the group stages, he was arguably the best player in all of Stage 1. And then we go to playoffs, and he just kind of disappeared. Like, sure, he was still like an alright player, but he was not really much more. And I think Ash is always going to be like a really decent player for this team, which is, I would say, like an upgrade to what Yeoman was. But I also do think like Foxy9 is probably a slight downgrade, and especially in terms of consistency. And I also think Yeoman, or not Yeoman. Oh yeah, Yeoman was the guy that they had before. I think Ash is a slight upgrade to Yeoman. Same with Lakia. I just think that Ash is also slightly more inconsistent. So I think overall, like this team's consistent performance won't be as high, but I think their peaks can be higher than old Genji. But yeah, currently I still don't think they're at the level to be placed as one of the top teams in the world right now, and I think they're therefore an A tier team. Now moving on to Paper X, this was like another low A tier team for me. Paper X, to me personally, while they have been looking absolutely incredible at some points, I still have my doubts. Um, like I don't know, man. Like in this EWC stage now, they've actually been playing with Mind Freak again instead of Patman. I'm gonna assume that's not how they're gonna be playing in Toronto, and they're gonna be playing with Patman. But that might not be what happens. We'll see. Um, as they did play without Patman in the ACL as well. Um, Now Patman is a great player, and I think he actually works really well on this team. And I mean the core of this team is just like fantastic. I just think their style of play will never be one of the best teams in the world. If teams, because of the strategic depth of this game, I don't think a playstyle like theirs will ever beat the best teams in the world. Um, and sure, they have done that in the past. They have beaten some of the best teams in the world, and they've come second in internationals and everything. But I think that's mostly because at that time the game was just very young, so that sort of playstyle worked a lot better. I think at this point we're deep enough in that it doesn't work as well anymore. Now, don't get me wrong, I still think they're one of the best teams in the world right now. But beating the best of the best, I don't think is possible with the playstyle that they have. Now, DRX is actually also going to be A tier, and this is where like APAC is sort of stacked. Is like they don't quite have those top of the top of the top, but they have so many teams at that level below that like it's just kind of ridiculous. As I do think DRX is also a team that should make champs. But it's so difficult to say should make champs because it's like with this region, like I could see Boom making champs. I could see T1 making champs. I could see these four teams I've already talked about make champs. Um, I could maybe not see the rest of the six make champs, but honestly, it could happen still. Like that's the beauty of this region. It's just like so stacked that it's just difficult to rank them. Now moving on to Talon, they're actually gonna be C tier, which is something that seems like a pretty big jump, but it really is just because as I said, I don't see them making champs. And although they did end up beating Nongshim, I also think Nongshim is like a C tier team. And I think there's a pretty big tier gap between like Talon and DRX, for example. And while I don't think the tier gap between like a Boom or a T1 is larger, I think I still think there's a tier gap there. I think the only reason they came 5th, 6th is because they got Nongshim. And I think Nongshim is a pretty equal team to them in quality. But honestly, if they would have played T1 in that lower round one, they probably would have been 8th, 7th, 8th. So yeah, I mean, this team still is solid. Like, I still think they have the potential to make champs. But I don't think I'm confident enough that they could make champs to put them in that B tier. And the B tier is very contested as well, so that's why they're in C tier, because I think they are still a playoffs lock, and should make playoffs. And if they don't, they should be pretty disappointed. But I honestly, just as much as I think they could make champs, I think there's about an equal chance that they make champs as that they don't even make playoffs, and that's why I have them in the C tier category. Now, Boom, I have in B tier. I do think Boom, although they did crumble sort of in playoffs, did have quite an unlucky way to get out of playoffs, as they started off in their first game to play peak form Genji. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't pretty. Don't get me wrong, it was not pretty. But it's still unlucky. And then they just get ran over by the Paper X train, and it's with maybe some playoffs jitters and the team not being fully ready, maybe it just ended up with them crumbling. And I don't think they're a bad team because like they are really good. They just got really unlucky and played two teams in a row that both made Masters Toronto and looks really good. Um, and I still think they could make champs. Like I'm at that level where I think this team is good enough to make champs. I just think there's a lot of good teams in this region that it's really difficult to say if they will or not. Um, Now moving on to Nongshim, I have them in C tier, um, and I do have sort of similar opinions to them that I do have to Talon. I do think this team probably is slightly worse than Talon, just simply for the fact that I think their play style is a bit more one-dimensional, while Talon has, I would say Talon is more in a sort of an identity crisis where they don't really know what their playstyle is, while Nongshim knows what their playstyle is, but I don't think it's a particularly good playstyle, and that's the issue for Nongshim. And I mean, Talon beating them 3 times should really like show that I would say Talon is slightly better than them, but we gotta also keep in mind that all those 3 games were all really close. And I do think Nongshim is at that level where they can keep it really close with most of the teams in the region, and that's why I have them in C tier. Um, Now T1, I still haven't beat here. As I said, they played against Paper X, man. I mean, Paper X just looked better and better with every single week, and this game was no exception. I mean, they even beat Paper X 13-3 on map 1, but then yeah, obviously got absolutely steamrolled after that point. But I just can't put the like Masters winners of the last international below a B tier. I just simply can't. And I do think this T1 roster is good enough to like make champs. Like they definitely are. Now the thing with like the DH rumors and everything is a bit odd, but I don't think it's gonna last. I think they should stay with their main roster pretty much. Um, like sure, DH could come in instead of Sullivan, but I think Sylvan is good enough, and I think also like in peak form, Sylvan is a great player, um, and that's what we saw at Toronto at Bangkok, obviously. But yeah, I think overall I just can't put T1 lower than this, and I don't think they deserve that either because I do still think they looked solid. So I'm gonna put them in B tier. Now moving on to global esports, I have my hopes up still for this team. I mean, adding Yeoman I think is interesting, but more than anything, what I really like about this team is just their coaching staff is so stacked at this point, so stacked. And I think every single player on this roster are just like so talented that I just can't doubt that they could go on a run. I still think it's kind of similarly to Giants in EMEA. It's going to be really, really difficult to make champs. Like, you will literally need to be top 2 to make champs. And I think, especially with this region being as stacked as it is, it's going to be really difficult for them to make champs. But this team, I could definitely see them dealing some damage and going far in like stage 2. Because I do still believe in this roster. I mean, Crystal is incredible. Yudotan is incredible. Poppy is incredible. And I mean, Yeoman looked maybe a bit rough at Gen G, but I still think he looked good enough to where he deserves a tier 1 spot. Now, Darion, it's going to be interesting to see what roster they're going to come up with because they also did sign Ban. They do have like 6 players right now, but I do think I have my hopes up for this global esports roster. Now, Zeta Division are also going to be a D tier team. I do think at the end of the split, we did see some really good positives. Now, are they going to keep on playing with Tenten or are they going to play with Dep? I don't know. I know that Tenten did go in for Dep because Dep was injured, I'm pretty sure. But it's really difficult to say. I mean, they did still play with Tenten at the ACL when they lost to Trace. But I still have some hope for this team. I'm not as hopeful as I am for like a global, but I still think there is the potential here to make like some damage. I don't think they're gonna make any internationals or anything like that, but I still think there's hope for the Japanese scene in this Zeta Division roster. Now, Team Secret is another team where it's just like it's really difficult to say. I mean, Envy is so good, like so good, and it's a bit sad that Jeremy and Jesse Vash are um, stepping down because I really like those 2 players. Or Jesse Vash, they say, are stepping down and they're benching Jeremy. I think both of those are still solid players. And honestly, I think it was more 2GE and Wildoria that was like the inconsistent parts of this roster. But I still want to believe in this team. And I mean, um, with them actually doing pretty solidly at EWC, I still could see them at least making playoffs. Um, and while I still think this roster isn't that great, I can't really put them in F tier because I do think they have the potential to make playoffs. Now, DFM, on the other hand, I don't have that much hope for. I think Gian is just too raw to play in Stage 1 right now. I think Art is just not good enough. Jinbung, Akame, and Mei are still all great players, but I just think they just don't have like the togetherness as a team to make it anywhere. And they still have yet to win a game since kickoff, I'm pretty sure. Like last time they won was against Paper X in kickoff. Yeah. They're yet to win a game since kickoff, and I could see that honestly continuing coming into stage 2. So yeah, I don't have much hope for DFM. Sorry, Japan. But if there's any hope you can have, it's probably Seda. Now, going into Americas, we're going to have our final S tier teams, as we're going to have G2 start off. And do I really need to say much more? I mean, I would argue they are pretty large favorites, even without Teo. Just considering, I would argue they have one of, if not the best coaching staff in the entire world right now. And on top of that, they have one of the best rosters since literally like this G2 slash the guard roster have been playing together since like what? Like 2021. And they've been a really solid team ever since. And the addition of Jogamo and Leaf from last year and Jogamo this year just makes that core even better. And it's just like this team is just ridiculously good at this point. And with Josh RT, Anderson, Shaq, I mean, it's just unfair, man. This team's just so good. And while they did struggle a bit in the playoffs, I do think that actually improved my hopes for this team. Not because like if they would have gone flawless and like 3-0, 2-0, 2-0, 3-0, obviously then I would probably have even higher hopes for this team. But honestly, I think this actually doesn't lower my hopes that much. Because I think this is good for them, like going on a bit of a lower bracket run and then like showing that they're still human in a way. Kind of similar to how when Fnatic got 3-1 in that grand final against Team Liquid, but obviously I would say this is even more dramatic. Although like losing a game obviously against in a grand finals is rough, and they still won. Them being literal like rounds away from not even making it in 2 games in a row I feel like that was a big wake up call for them. And you saw that in the players. And I feel like that's why I'm even more confident in this team now. Now, I also kind of needed to put Sentinels here. Oops. I did not. I have put the Fnatic logo. Whoops. Sorry, Sun fans. Um, but at least you can be happy because I put them in S tier. I think Sentinels are at the level where, while I never see this team being like the absolute best of highest of S tier teams, they are just so like overall solid with every single player. Like Zekin is one of the best duelists in the world. Bang is one of the best controllers in the world. John Cutie is one of the best um, initiators slash senti slash IGLs in the world. Narrate is a solid player, and then Celsius is a solid player. Like this team just overall has like a really really good team. It's just about putting everything together where I feel like they can at points look a bit shaky. And that's why I don't see them ever being like one of the best in the world. Um, unless the meta is, because I do think especially compared to last year's roster, I think this year's roster is probably a bit more shaky because I do think Tens and Saucy was such like solid pieces for this team. Like we saw it already at Bangkok. Like this team, if it goes poorly, it can go really bad. And that's sort of why I won't have them at the top of the S tier for me, but they are just too good not to put here. And so, yeah, that's why they're in S tier. Now, MIBR are going to be an A tier team. I feel like this one is pretty just straightforward. I mean, MIBR, they are looking really good. I don't think they are at Sentinels or G2's level, like, not remotely close. But I mean, Aspas Verno are both incredible. Cortizia is looking great. Ardzine, while a bit inconsistent, is still looking like a really solid IGL. And Genom is really just consistently decent. And I think that's all he needs to be. Now, do I think this roster definitely, with some roster moves, could be a top team in the world? Yes. Do I think they need to make those roster moves? Not really. I still think this roster as is, with just a bit more polish, could be up there. Um, but just at this current moment, I just don't think they have that polish, and I still think some of the players are not at their peak level yet. Like Cortesia and Genom, both I think could look better. Ardzine, I think, is probably as good as he's ever going to become. But I think Verno, Cortesia, and that's scary, by the way. Verno, who I would argue is like a top 10 player in all of Americas right now, I don't think is in his peak form yet. And that's scary to think. And I don't think Cordesia or Shannon are in their peak form either. So I think this roster, without any, don't actually need to make any roster moves. Like, I think this roster is really good. I just think they need time. Um, and they don't have that for Toronto, and that's why I can't put them higher than A tier. Now, EG, I'm just kind of gonna have to put them B tier. I don't think they're at the level of like an MIBR or something like that. I do think obviously they did play a close game against G2, but that was also a very shaky G2 at the time. And I think EG overall is a team that's like, if the other team is looking remotely shaky, EG will take full advantage. Like EG is one of those teams that if a team is looking shaky, they will take so much advantage of that. But I don't think they have the firepower to be one of the best teams in the world. And that's something we saw against G2. I mean, G2 looked really shaky, and that was something EG could take advantage of, especially like Lotus winning Lotus and then keeping Pearl that close. But I just think they don't have the firepower and player quality to beat a team like G2, at least even if they're shaky. And that's the issue for me with EG. Now, 100 Thieves, on the other hand, I do think have the player quality. I just think they have some issues maybe with player. Maybe they do have some player quality issues. I mean, I think Xander was a pretty large downgrade. I still think Xander is a decent controller, but the difference between Xander and Bang is like Bang is one of the best controllers in the world, while Xander is like a mediocre at best controller. And then I mean Cryo EU are incredible. I still don't really think Asuna is that great, and Boostio is a really solid, really good IGL, but I just think in general, like this roster will just always have sort of a playstyle that doesn't really work that well, especially when it comes to like higher levels of play. Um, Now, do I think that's maybe because of Asuna a bit? Yeah, probably. Asuna and Cryo kind of just fucks this team over a bit with their roles, but that's just kind of what you have to live with, and that's why they're B tier. Crew is also going to be B tier. I do think Crew had a really rough playoffs and kind of choked a bit, but like their roster is just too good to not put at least in B tier. I mean, they have Kesnet, one of America's best duelists. They have Mazzino, um, who was incredible last year and still looking great. Shy, one of America's best Sentinel players. Adverso looked pretty poor, but I think that's more because he's an IGL than anything. And then Melser is always going to be really good. Um, so I can't put this Crew team lower than B tier, at least not at this current moment. Now NRG, I just kind of have to put them in C tier. Like sure, all right, they have looked absolutely incredible in EWC. Don't get me wrong, but I just can't. Could they make champs? Very unlikely, but maybe. Like I don't. I think the highest they could probably come in second, but I don't. But the chances of them coming second is too low for me to be like, oh yeah, they could make champs. I just don't have that like expectations of this roster. Like Ethan is great, Psalm is great, Brock is great, Mod is great. Like they have a great core, and I think Bunker is a really good coach. And I really think without not anything against FNS, but I think without FNS, this team really has the potential to be really good. I just don't see myself ever seeing this team at champs at this current moment. Um, and it's unfortunate for NRG, but that's just the point they're in at this part of the season. Now C9, I was gonna put them in B tier actually, but I ended up changing my mind and going down to C tier, just simply because I think this team has qualities that could make them definitely make champs, but they are just way too inconsistent for me to confidently say they could, and especially considering they probably don't make it on champs points. Um, I'm just not confident enough that they could make it to put them anywhere higher than C tier right now. Now going into 2G, I'm actually gonna put them in D tier. I think with Spike on the roster now, coming into stage 2 and everything, this roster has some real potential, and I could actually see them making playoffs. Although it's gonna be really tough with the group they got, I could still see it happening. And honestly, it's kind of the same with Leviathan. Leviathan for me is gonna be D tier. I would probably honestly have put them in C tier if they would have not changed anything. But just putting in Sada and Akiana just put that little doubt in my mind that I just couldn't put them higher than D tier personally. Now Loud is so difficult to say because we pretty much just know 3 players on the roster as Vinny and DJ Scene is just like, or Vinny, DJZ, and Tui's all just got released. So it's just Pankada, Cowan, and Luke show right now. And there are some rumors of the roster, right? I'm pretty sure there was some rumor about like Robbie BK and stuff like that. And that could work. It could work. I still think there is potential in this roster, especially with how good Luke shows look. I still think there's potential. I just, at this current moment, am not very hopeful. And while there is potential for them to make playoffs, I don't think it's high enough to where I expect them to. Now, Furia, on the other hand, is just a straight F tier team. I mean, they won their first game against 2G without their main roster, with a tier 2 roster, and then ever since then they've not won a game. And with how much uncertainty it is around where this team is at, and they have a 5-man core that they did play at EWC of Wadi, Heat, Urango, Tuiz, and Pala. But even then, like, that core just looked absolutely horrendous as well. So, like, either way, I just don't have any hope that Furia can go anywhere. Like, genuinely just not any hope at all. Now, moving on to China, final region. Probably going to go through this one a lot quicker, but we're going to start with Xilai, where pretty much just, I think any team in China right now, there is a chance they could make champs, but it's so like the region is such an uncertainty that I just can't put any team above a B tier right now. So that's where Xilai is. Xilai is in B tier. I feel kind of similar to Bilibili. I do think Xilai is probably high B tier, while Bilibili is more low B tier. I think Bilibili should make, or maybe not should, could make champs, and probably should make champs, but it's just like it's so uncertain that it's like I just can't put them higher than B. Now Wolves, I'm even gonna put as far as C tier because I do think Wolves did have a bit of a fluky run to make it. I mean, they pretty much just beat Tech and Bilibili, and then after that point just looked horrendous. And sure, beating Tech and Bilibili is a pretty nice feat, but I don't think it's enough to put them higher than C tier for me. I think they should make playoffs. Could they make champs? Maybe, but I'm not very certain. Now, Edward Gaming is still going to be at least B tier for me. I don't think you can put them much lower than those. I mean, they actually did play their main roster in the CES now, and they just blazed through that thing like it was like it was homework. I mean, they won every single map. They didn't lose a single one. Sure, the Pearl against FPX got kind of odd and didn't end up getting played, but overall, like, this team is just good. Like, they're just good. And I don't doubt that they could definitely make champs, but I just, because they didn't make Toronto, I just can't put them higher than B right now, just personally. Now, DRG are going to be C tier. I think they're definitely going to make playoffs. Could they make champs? Yes. But I'm not confident enough in them making champs for me to put them any higher than C. Pretty much is why they're here. Now, Trace is sort of similar there. Could they make champs? Definitely. I mean, we've seen the potential in this roster, especially in kickoff, but I just don't have enough confidence in them to put them any higher than C. Same with Nova. Honestly, like, Nova has had, like, they had a great stage one after losing to DRG, winning against EDG, FPX, Tyloo, and then having a bit of a rough game against Texture, but then just kind of bombed out of playoffs, and it's a bit unlucky, sure, but yeah, I don't know. It's the Nova core definitely is good enough to make champs. I just think I'm just not very sure if this Nova team at the moment and what level they're gonna be on. Now, Titan Esports Club, I'm gonna put in D tier. I think honestly any team of FPX or FPX and Titan Esports Club are probably gonna be the two teams fighting for that final playoff spot. And while Titan Esports actually didn't make playoffs, I think there's a pretty high risk that they don't in stage 2. And that's why I put them in D tier, because I just don't think they should make playoffs. I don't like I wouldn't be mad if they didn't. Let's say that much. I wouldn't be disappointed if they didn't make playoffs. And that's why FPX is also in D tier, because I do think FPX, they have the potential to actually make playoffs and go pretty far. they just looked very inconsistent in stage 1. And that's why I can't put them higher than D. And that's why, obviously, why they didn't end up making playoffs eventually. Because they started off really strong and then just kind of fell off a cliff. And that's why it's really difficult to say how good this roster is actually going to be. But it did look really good at one point, and I think their peak level is very high. And that's why I have them in D tier. Now, the final 3 teams, JDG, Tyloo, and AG, I mean, these are just the bottom 3 teams in China, and I think it's pretty much solidified at this point. I mean, the only game Tyloo won was against DRG for some reason in their final game, but also DRG had kind of already made playoffs. So it seemed like they didn't really care too much about that game. And then JDG, the only team they beat was AG, and AG is AG. AG is just the worst team in the region. So yeah, all 3F. But yeah, that was China. And going into the official tier list, this is what it looks like. Yeah, we have 10 teams in B, C, and D, and then the other 3 categories have a slightly less. So yeah, this is my tier list. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, subscribe, comment, I don't know. And thank you for watching.